What would you do if your daily act of kindness turned out to be the perfect cover for something horrifying? Meet Marcus Thompson, a 45-year-old man living in the quiet suburban neighborhood of Meadowbrook, Denver. Every single morning at exactly 6 a.m., neighbors would see him walking down the street with large bags of food. For the past 3 years, Marcus had been feeding 15 to 20 stray dogs scattered around the area. The entire community loved him for it. Kids would wave at him from their bedroom windows. Elderly residents would smile and call out, "Good morning, Marcus," as he passed by. They nicknamed him the Dog Angel, the kindest soul in the neighborhood who cared for animals that nobody else wanted. Marcus seemed like the perfect neighbor. Quiet, helpful, and genuinely caring. He never asked for anything in return, never sought recognition. Just a simple man doing good deeds every single day. But then police received an anonymous tip that would change everything. Little did anyone know, those dogs weren't just pets to Marcus. They weren't just hungry animals he felt sorry for. They were something much more sinister. They were his perfect alibi. What the police discovered will make you question every kind stranger you've ever met. It started with a phone call to the Denver Police Department at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night. An anonymous caller reported strange smells coming from Marcus's backyard, smells that didn't seem right for someone who just fed dogs. "Look, I know he feeds those strays," the caller whispered nervously. "But this smell, it's not dog food. It's something else. Something really bad." The desk officer initially dismissed it. Of course it would smell, the guy feeds 20 dogs every day. But when the same caller phoned back 3 nights later, insisting something was seriously wrong, Detective Sarah Collins decided to take a closer look. Collins started surveillance on Marcus's morning routine. For 1 full week, she watched him walk the same route, carry the same bags, feed the same dogs at the same spots. But something felt off. The dogs weren't randomly scattered around the neighborhood like normal strays. They gathered at very specific locations, always the same spots like they were trained to be there. Marcus carried different bags on different days too. Some were clearly heavier than others, causing him to walk slower and take more breaks. The biggest red flag? The dogs seemed unusually aggressive and territorial around certain feeding spots. They would growl at other animals, even other dogs who came too close to these particular areas. Collins followed the feeding route on foot and made a disturbing discovery. The ground at 3 of the feeding locations appeared disturbed, like something had been buried underneath and recently dug up. Detective Collins got a search warrant and arrived at the first feeding location with a full forensic team at dawn. What they found would make national headlines. The K9 units went crazy at the first spot. 3 feet underground, they discovered personal belongings, a wallet, jewelry, and torn clothing. The items belonged to Sarah Mitchell, a homeless woman reported missing 8 months ago. The second location revealed something even more disturbing. Marcus had been using the dog feeding routine as the perfect cover to visit his burial sites. Each feeding spot was actually a carefully chosen grave. The dogs were unknowingly helping him by constantly disturbing the scent trails with their own smells. Animal scents completely mask decomposition odors, explained the forensic expert. It's actually genius in the most twisted way possible. The third location yielded the most shocking evidence, a recent burial. The victim was identified as Robert Chin, a homeless veteran who'd been reported missing just 2 weeks earlier. His body still showed signs of recent trauma. As the investigation expanded, a horrifying pattern emerged. Marcus specifically targeted people who wouldn't be immediately missed: homeless individuals, runaway teenagers, elderly people with no family connections. His method was simple but effective: gain their trust by offering food and shelter, then strike when the opportunity presented itself. The dogs created the perfect cover story. Who would ever suspect someone who spent their mornings feeding hungry strays? The community had actually protected him with their admiration. He seemed so caring, neighbors told reporters. Always worried about those poor animals. The reality was far more sinister. Marcus had weaponized the community's love for his apparent kindness. Evidence eventually linked him to 7 victims over the 3-year period, all buried beneath his daily feeding routes. Police surrounded Marcus's house at 5 a.m. on a Thursday morning, right before his usual feeding time. He was calmly loading dog food bags into his car, acting completely normal, whistling softly to himself. The arrest happened in front of his horrified neighbors. Marcus showed absolutely no emotion, no surprise, no fear, no anger. Just an eerie calm that chilled everyone present. The search of his house revealed the true extent of his planning. Detailed journals mapped every stray dog location within a 5-mile radius. He had notes about neighborhood patrol schedules, busy traffic times, and when people were most likely to be inside their homes. Most chilling were the victim profiles, photos, daily routines, and personal information about homeless individuals he'd been stalking for weeks before striking. During psychological evaluation, the motive became clear. Marcus had severe antisocial personality disorder. He felt no empathy for humans whatsoever, but genuinely cared about animals. This created the perfect psychological cover for his crimes. "People are disposable," he told the interviewer without emotion. "But dogs are loyal. They deserve care." His twisted logic used genuine animal compassion to justify human disposal. The community was in complete shock. They'd held neighborhood vigils celebrating his kindness. Children who waved at him every morning needed therapy to process the betrayal. Detective Collins later said, "In 20 years of police work, I've never seen someone weaponize compassion itself so effectively." Marcus's only expression of remorse? That getting caught meant the dogs wouldn't be fed anymore. The trial became a media sensation. News outlets called him the dog feeder killer. Prosecutors used his own detailed journals as primary evidence against him. Marcus pleaded guilty to 7 counts of first-degree murder to avoid the death penalty. He received life in prison without possibility of parole. For the families of victims, the trial finally brought closure after years of uncertainty about their missing loved ones. The Meadowbrook community started a legitimate program to continue feeding the stray dogs, but the psychological damage took years to heal. Property values dropped as the area became nationally known for the case. Detective Collins received a commendation for her persistent investigation, and the case changed how police departments handle Good Samaritan complaints nationwide. Marcus refuses all interview requests from prison. The dogs still gather at the old feeding spots, waiting for food that never comes. Local animal rescue groups have stepped in to help them. One final twist emerged months later, a journal entry suggesting a potential 8th victim. The case remains officially open. The community learned a harsh lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous predators hide behind acts of kindness. Trust your instincts. If something feels off about someone's behavior, even someone doing apparent good deeds, it probably is. Evil often wears the mask of virtue.